So let me give you a quick look at two other tools. One is pivot tables, which is built into Excel. And then another is Google Trends, which is a pretty easy tool to navigate. And you can customize Google Trend searches. So I'll show you that in a minute. First, if you go to that drive, we left a data set in here, Major League Baseball. So what I want you to do is download that Major League Baseball data set from the shared drive. And then we're going to go open Excel. So I will go to my downloads and open that, and then I'll go share my screen and show you Excel. And what I'm going to do is show you some things in Excel and then go into pivot tables and show you some more elaborate things. So here's our Excel spreadsheet, and it's 800 or 900 lines of Major League Baseball players, and it's got a lot of detail in here. So it's alphabetized right now by default by first name, which is not very useful. It's got all the team names, the position the players play, and then their salaries. And so just in the Excel, we can do some things with it with sort to figure some things out. So let's do this. Let's try to find who makes the most money as a baseball player. So I'm going to hit data, sort, again, up at the top, data, sort. What I'm going to do is select salary and then largest to smallest. And if I do this, it'll show us the highest paid players. Mike Trout, an outfielder with the LA Angels, $34 million. This data is a couple of years old, by the way. And then a pitcher, Clayton Kershaw with the LA Dodgers, also $34 million. Not a bad salary. There are 800, let me scroll down to the bottom, 878 rows of data, and a whole lot of players make the league minimum. Now, you're not going to starve on the $500,000 a year league minimum, but I just want to show that individual numbers can be dramatically different. So big difference between $545,000 a year and $34 million a year, which is what Mike Trout makes. So a couple of tools to navigate an Excel spreadsheet. I can hold Command or Control. I can hold that and hit the right arrow, and it'll jump from the first column to the last in my data set. I can hold Command or Control and down arrow. It'll jump to the last row in my data set. So that can be useful navigating. We're going to look at some different things. So what can we do with this data? We could sort by another column. Let's sort by team. So we'll click data sort, sort by team, and then A to Z, just alphabetical. It'll probably start with Arizona, then the Angels. So here we go. So you can glance and see who's the highest paid player on each team. 31 million for the Diamondbacks, 21 million for the Braves. Starts to suggest that maybe the Braves have a lower salary cap or a lower total salary than some of these other teams. Same with the Orioles. Now, that's not necessarily true. It's possible one player makes 30 million, but a lot of other players make more than the league minimum. So we're not quite sure how to figure out averages, but there is a way to do that. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes with pivot tables. But again, you can go through here and glance, see who the highest paid player is on each team. They bounce around. By the way, very often they're SP, which is starting pitcher, and then RP is relief pitcher. So you'll see pitchers get a lot of money in the leagues. So some things that we can do just in Excel. So let me do this. I'm going to look at some cell numbers. So this is D2, column D, row 2, and that's important. So I want D2, and now I'm going to scroll to the bottom, row 838. I'm sorry, 880, 878. So D2 is the first cell with numbers in it. D878 is the next cell with numbers in it. That's important because what I'm going to do is, let me delete this and I'll remake it for you. So what I want to do is figure out the total salaries. So I'm just going to hit total here, and I'm going to enter a formula for this cell. So I can go up here and it equals sum D2 colon D878, and it'll total up all the salaries, almost $4 billion in salaries across all Major League Baseball players. So we can do some other stuff. Let's figure out the average salary. We can do it in the same way. So I can type equals and actually use the word average, put in the same formula, D2 colon D878. It captures every row. So now it's just going to tell me the average salary is $4.5 million. So 3 calculations you can make quickly just in Excel. But what questions might you have about this Major League Baseball player data? So what about average salaries by team? We saw that some teams max salary is about 20 million, other teams it's over 30 million. What about salary per player? Pitchers versus outfielders versus infielders. We can figure that kind of detail out in pivot tables. So what we're looking at here is the ability to sort a column and then come up with one or two variables compared to each other. So again, we can go down here and look at total or average salary, but we're really just looking at the whole aggregate data set. We can't compare more than one or two variables at a time. Pivot tables lets us do that. So what I'm going to do is first make a reference to your last line of data. In this case, we know it's 878. So D878 is the end of my data. A1 is the beginning of my data, which is name. So just keep that in mind, D878. It's a test for accuracy when you're loading a pivot table. Here's how you do it. You click Insert at the top and then Pivot Table, and it's going to give you a range of your data. It defaults to this. We just want to glance and make sure it's right, and it is A1 to D878. So the numbers are there for a reference. I always check my Excel spreadsheet before I go into a pivot table because I want to make sure I'm not leaving out any data. So again, I'm just going to click Insert at the top, the Insert tab, and then Pivot Table. Double check that it's capturing all my data. It is, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to open this Pivot Table field. Now, if you still want to get back to your data, don't panic. Down here at the bottom, there's a tab where I click Major League Baseball. There's my original data. In fact, it should still have at the bottom the average and totals and stuff that I added up. Yeah, there they are. But sheet 1 is now a pivot table. So I'm going to click into pivot tables, and let's think, what might we want to compare? Let's look at salaries by team and see if we can make something interesting out of that. So I'm going to click team and drag it down to rows, and then salary and drag it down to values. So the first thing it shows me is total salaries. Now, let me reformat this cell. So what I'm going to do is, because that's hard to read, it would be nice if we had commas here that would show us that it's currency. So here's how you do that. I'm going to go up to B at the very top of this column because I want to change that whole column. I'm going to right click and select Format Cells. And then one of the options is, these are numbers, but what kind of numbers are they? Are they time? Are they raw numbers? They're currency, they're dollar figures, right? So if I select currency, I'm going to make this 0 decimal places and then hit OK. And now I have commas in here, which make it easier to read that that's 116 million. Now, let's say we wanted to sort this column biggest to smallest. You can do that. It's a little tricky. If I try up here, I'm not going to be able to do it. If I click sum of salary, it's not going to give me an option. If I click this little pull down in column A, though, and whatever kind of pivot table you have, you're always going to have this pull down in column A. If I click there, I can go select team. I'm going to change to sum of salary and descending. And I just sorted by column 2 by clicking this little pull down in column A, column 1. So I changed this from team to sum of salary and descending. And now it tells me biggest payroll to smallest payroll. The Giants pay 221 million total salary to their players altogether. My poor Cincinnati Reds are less than half that. So let's see, Texas Rangers right in the middle. Houston Astros must be on here somewhere. Here they are. Houston Astros actually paid pretty well in the years when they got deep into the playoffs. Anyway, that's a quick way you can sort data and get a little more information about these teams. So now we know the Giants pay a lot more than the Rays or the Braves or the A's. And so that's a quick look at something you can do. Now, what else might we want to interrogate in this data? How about, we know which players make the most, Mike Trout, Clayton Kershaw, they're both over 34 million a year. What about position? So what I can do is I'll turn off team. We'll bring that back up here and bring position down here. So now I have position and salary, and I can do the same thing. I'm going to click here. It may have already defaulted. I'm going to change sum of salary and descending, and now we can look. Starting pitchers are the highest paid players in baseball. No surprise. And again, that's total salary, $1,106,247,000. So pitchers all across the major league. Remember the numbers we were looking at before, 221 million. was by team. So this is every pitcher in the major leagues totaled. That's why it's a billion. It's more than a team. Pitchers make a lot. Starting pitchers make a ton. Relief pitchers are third place, just behind outfielders. Remember, outfielders, there are 3, right, left, and center fielder in every game. So there are a lot of outfielders to add up. Really, being a pitcher is the way to get paid. So that's another thing you can do with data. What about position and team? Well, we can do that. I'm going to bring team down here, and we've got the way it's organized right now. Position is above team in this rows segment, and we can sort of figure some things out. Again, it's sorted highest to lowest, so we can look and say starting pitchers on the Cubs. Here's their salary. Here's outfielders by team. It's a little hard to read this data. It's there, but watch, I can make a simple adjustment. I'm going to move team above position. Actually, bring position down below team. If I reverse those, all of a sudden this data becomes a lot more logical. Now I'm looking at, here's what the Giants pay by pitcher. Guess what? Now I can quickly look and say, man, the Red Sox and the Cubs pay a lot more for pitchers than the Giants and the Nationals do. See, they're starting pitchers, 58 million. Now maybe they have more pitchers or some really high-priced pitchers, like a Clayton Kershaw. But look, the Mets don't pay their pitchers. Look, their pitchers, starting pitcher, goodness gracious, starting pitcher here for the Mets is 24 million. I'm dying to see what the Yankees are paying their starting pitchers. So here we go. Yankees play their starting pitchers 39 million. Again, not that much. So kind of interesting that some teams pay their pitchers, all of their pitchers together, $81 million at the Cubs, 76 million at the Red Sox. Some other teams, it's 30 million, about a third of what they pay. So that's a quick look at what you can do in pivot tables, which is compare 2, even 3 different points of data at the same time. Now this is also sum. So let's do something else. Let me do, I'll take team away for a sec. We've got position and sum of salary. I'm going to click this letter I over here under values sum of salary and change it to average. And this will be more useful because maybe some teams have 4 starting pitchers, maybe some have 3. So the salaries are going to be lopsided that way. So what I'm going to do is change, again, over here in values, I clicked the letter I next to sum, and I'm changing sum, which is let's add them all up, to average, and click OK. And now it's going to tell me the average salary of these different positions. So the average starting pitcher makes 5 million. The average designated hitter makes 12 million. There aren't that many designated hitters. Being a relief pitcher in this case actually pays less than all the other positions. So again, an interesting finding by making a little tweak in pivot tables. So these are things you can play with. Again, we could bring team back down here. And I'll bring position under team again. It becomes a little more logical. This is average salary of a first baseman on the Giants versus a first baseman on the Cubs. Giants pay more than double what the Cubs pay for an outfielder. So you see, pivot tables aren't so much useful for visualization for an interactive data piece, but they're fantastic for writing an article because they give you all kinds of detail for actually telling your story.